You said that you I believe you called it a subgroup that is meant to, or maybe not subgroup. I might be mixing articles at this point, but
Oh
really,
yeah.
but a
Yes.
group that is
Yes.
there for the sole purposes of being policed. Tell me about that.
Yes. Yes. So there's a question as to, so as the economy moves away from an industrial base and towards kind of a service provision, there's this population that gets left out, particularly in Rust Belt cities like Baltimore, Gary, Detroit, right? That population is predominantly black, predominantly poor. I think they're more men than women, because women can actually get into the service economy in ways that men can't. Now, one argument is that that population becomes obsolete, right? And people are making this argument as early as the 60s, right? That they serve no valuable purpose and they're basically just going to be killed off. But another argument that I'm kind of making is they actually do serve a purpose. They actually provide the stuff by which elites can actually then spend money on incarceration on the one hand. The neighborhoods Freddie Gray lived in spends $17 million incarcerating its residents, more than any other neighborhood in Maryland, and then policing on the other, right? So the police would not exist in the same degree if that population didn't. And all those guys are getting jobs, they're getting good benefits, and in fact, given how safe it is to be a police officer now, it's almost, but not quite, the equivalent of working for Ford in Detroit when I was a kid.
So, I'm laughing because what you said has so many implications that it sounds like the people in the certain neighborhoods, a certain class, right? Because this is not happening in every black neighborhood, but there are certain neighborhoods that are targeted to not only be a revenue source, but they are the product almost. They are the product that these companies, being the police agencies, are turning out in order to turn and support their careers, which reminds me, go ahead.
Yeah.
It's a business, right?
Yeah, it's a straight up biopolitical move. It's straight biopolitics, right? It's like this population generates like a life force for elements of the state. It's actually it's almost science fiction like when you think about it.
Which reminds you, what you said and how you describe those neighborhoods reminds me of an experience that I had when I was just getting started as a teacher. And for the life of me, Professor Spence, I could not understand why the hell I stayed in the overdraft. I could not figure it out. It was a mystery to me until I sat down and really just tracked every single detail of how the bank was operating. And I discovered really quickly what there was a class action lawsuit was this particular bank arranged your purchases. No matter when you purchased it, they arranged it so that they could maximize your overdraft fees. A couple of class action lawsuits out there. I went to the bank and I asked them, I said, why? Why would you do this to people who barely have enough money to be at your bank in the first place? And in a moment of, I don't know if she knew what she was saying or just blatant transparency, she said, we have to make money off of you somehow. And I realized then, I realized then that we were a commodity to them, and they had the ability to use the system to extract wealth out of us by any means necessary. So when I read your article, that's what it, in my experience, because of my language, because of the way I address people, I guess they sum me up. They can't get money out of me by harassing me because there's not much to harass me over, even if they wanted to, and I can call my attorney and they don't want to go through that. But they sure as hell got me when I was about 22, 23 with a couple of $1,000 worth of overdraft fees. And we all become commoditized in one fashion or another. I want you to get the last word on that, and then I want to shift gears and talk about your book really quick.
Yeah. I mean, and that's really it. And again, there's a challenge. So I'm going to be in Philadelphia talking about a book written by somebody named Marie Gottschalk, a University of Pennsylvania PhD, and I mean not PhD professor. And she's right. She wrote two of the most important books on the prison industrial complex written, and she spends a little bit of time talking about Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow. Now, The New Jim Crow is a wonderful book as far as its ability to mobilize folk, but in articulating what we're dealing with as the new Jim Crow, as if it's just a new racism that hits everybody equally. Yes. What it does is it ignores that intra-racial dynamic. So because she gets that dynamic wrong empirically, to the extent that people are articulating political solutions, those political solutions are going to be wrong. And then at worst, what they're going to do is really be tailored to a specific sector of the Black population rather than broad swaths of it.
See, I can't leave now. I can't leave the story now, because I mean, you're really exposing something here that I think has been erased. And for me, it's because I feel that who was I? It was a preview. There it was. It was a preview of this Obama movie that came out that I do plan on seeing. South Side with me or West Side, whatever, with Michelle and Barack. And in a split second in the preview, she was at the church with Obama when they first met, their first date, and he was motivating a crowd. And she said something. She said, and this is the movie. I don't know if this is canon, but this is what she said in the movie. She said, "It's been so long since I've been connected to the issues of the people like this." And I wonder how often we try to make Black Lives Matter or police violence, as much as it is a Black issue, it's also a Black poor or working class issue more so than anything else. And I wonder how many people who are wealthy and who are upper middle class, particularly African Americans, gravitate to this because it allows them and affords them the opportunity to feel as though they are connected with the struggle and the fight, when in reality they are still severely separated from that fight that a person has in Roxbury, in Boston, or in the different districts that you pointed out in Baltimore. Speak to that for me.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, there is a dynamic where all of us know somebody, right? So no matter what, so one thing that does make us different than our white counterparts is that even if we're not, like, even if I'm not on the other side, if I'm on the quote unquote right side, and I can act with the police as if I were white, I feel like Eddie Murphy in that old school Saturday Night Live skit, but you can, even as that, I remember being on the wrong side one, and then everybody I know who's been on the wrong side. So part of it really is folks understanding, like, there but for the grace of God go I, or that was me when I was a kid, or that was me when I lived in East St. Louis, or whatever, right? So that's part of it. But the other part of it is that and this is something that we have to figure out how to deal with politically, is that outrage. Right? That outrage dynamic is a real thing. When you see the video, you see this video, right? And that outrage thing, it generates a quick political response, right? It generates an affect, and then that affect is quickly changed into into a political response. Now, the benefit of that is because of that, we see more movement. But the challenge is, one, that outrage isn't that... the slope, outrage goes like this. It spikes, and then inevitably it goes away. Right? And then when it goes away, it's like that movement energy it dissipates. Right? Unless it's connected to institutions. Right? But then the second is that outrageous event. Freddie Gray suffered from lead poisoning. Right? Corinne Gaines was suing, I believe she was suing her landlord also for lead poisoning. Right? That lead poisoning dynamic is a dynamic that's that affects Black, poor, and working class populations more than anyone else, and it's a slow death, right? So there's not going to be a TV incident of somebody dying from lead poisoning, so that makes it much harder for people to mobilize and organize around that. The hardest thing, and I remember when Baltimore was relatively fallow politically, and now I think it's one of the most important cities in the country as far as political activism. But one of the biggest challenges that folks are having in Baltimore is how do we generate organizing around systemic structural issues kind of related to the way capital works in the modern moment, as opposed to these really quick incidents of police brutality.
Right.